All right, back for another solo episode. This episode, I want to talk about getting into coaching. It's something that I get asked quite a lot, like how do you start? Where do you start? How do you get into coaching? How do you build a coaching brand? And it's something that I think is extremely valuable to know how to do if you're going to give it a crack and be successful. Because a lot of people try to coach and never really get off the ground just by virtue of the fact that they don't know how. And part of that is if you don't know how and then you begin on the journey, you might learn by trial and fire and get good at it. I mean, for a lot of us that started out in the early days like myself, that is what happened. We just jumped in. The benefit back then was that there was no real expectation of what it should have looked like because it didn't really exist for the most part. Now, everyone is familiar with online coaching, and so if you're getting into it, you need to be prepared. You need to understand what you're doing, how you're going to do it if you're going to be successful with it. When people say, how do I get into online coaching? A lot of the times what they're really asking is how do they set up the business aspect of it? Like how do they get themselves out there? How do they get people to sign up? And that's probably starting a little bit too far down the track. Where you really need to start is the coaching itself. You have to have a very clear understanding of what your coaching is going to look like, especially if you haven't done it before. Now, this is the case, especially for lifters that are turning into coaches. So high-level lifters, especially, I got to stop saying especially, I've said it like 10 times. High-level lifters who are like, okay, people are asking me for coaching because they recognize my lifting skill. I'm just going to start offering it. And you've probably heard people say before, the best lifters don't always make the best coaches. That doesn't have to be the case. The reason that's not the case is when a lifter is just like, do it like me, rather than understanding coaching. And so where you really have to start is unpacking and preparing what your coaching actually is. So with that, of course, you're going to need to understand two fundamental things. One is going to be programming, one is going to be technique. So you need to have a broad understanding of programming principles. You need to understand what they are and how to drive them. So understand the principle of progressive overload. Understand the systems and processes that you can use to drive progressive overload. I'm talking about things like, are you going to use RPE? Are you going to use fixed number programming? Are you going to use a combination of both? What does your accessory layout look like? What does your block length look out? How do you distribute blocks across a macro cycle? Do you understand the concept of macrocycles, mesocycles, microcycles? How are you going to piece the pieces? How are you going to put the pieces together to ensure that you can predict a result at the end of it? You have to have a clear understanding of what your programming is and going to be. And the more prepared you are with that, the better your outcomes are going to be. The better your outcomes, the faster your name as a coach is going to grow. So you have to understand programming principles. There are plenty of resources. I'm going to mention it a few times. Of course, that's why I developed the Zero Coach Development System, is so people starting out with coaching can skip all the fucking it up along the way and just come straight to the source and learn a system based on principles from the very start. However, there are other resources. I'm not just going to plug myself. If you want to learn more about programming, a great place to start would be something like the Scientific Principles of Strength Training, the Chad Wesley Smith, Mike Israetel book from back in the day. I know that Mike T and the RTS crew put out a lot of good programming resources. If you're more in the RTS style of programming camp, they have tons of resources in their education system, so you can check that out as well. But you have to have a clear understanding of what your programming is going to be. And then from there, you're going to need to develop programming structure. I mean, like templates. You're going to have to develop a systemized strategy of how you're going to deliver your program. Build out a whole bunch of different templates. Make a smart template that can spit out a program for you. That's what we do at Zero. We have a very smart template where we can plug in a bunch of stuff and it'll still spit out a highly individualized program. You need to have that in place so that when people start onboarding, you're not scrambling to try and develop these programs. Because let's say you're starting from scratch, you put it out there, hey, I'm coaching now, contact me for coaching, and you get 20 people, and you've only got a week to onboard 20 people, and you have to do everything from a blank spreadsheet, you're going to waste a lot of time just trying to figure things out. So write a bunch of programming templates out. Remember, a template is just a skeleton. It's a structure. A template is modifiable. It's not about templating programs so you can be lazy with it. It's about templating programs so you can be efficient with individualizing where you need to, so you can be quicker at your job. That's the whole point of a template. Look at your template as the thoughts that you have in your head put down onto paper. If I ask you, write me 10 strength blocks and here's 10 different lifters, I guarantee your strength block will look pretty similar for all of them. So it's taking that structure, what you believe a hypertrophy program or a strength program or a development program, a peaking program, what you believe that should look like, putting that down on paper as a fixed structure or a fixed template, and then being able to modify that based on the circumstances that you get with the individual lifter. You want to do that with your programming. Technique is going to be really important to understand. A lot of strength gain is going to happen in the technical realm. It's not just the art of programming. You have to remember that strength is expressed through the way the movement happens. So movement dictates the strength expression, which dictates then the performance on the day if we're talking about something like powerlifting. You have to have a very clear idea of your philosophy around technique because people are going to be asking you that. You have to have a very clear idea of how you're going to address technical issues, and you have to have a very clear idea of how you're going to build that into your programming. What exercises are you going to use to address specific technical breakdowns in the lifts, and does it make sense? Do the dots all join up? Because people are going to ask, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this frequency, this volume, this particular exercise? What does it mean? And you have to be able to answer those articulately. Otherwise, you'll lose the trust of lifters. And you can't, if you're a lifter yourself, like a good lifter, you can't just rely on your lifting prowess, because your lifting prowess will not get the client a result. You have to get the client a result through your knowledge and understanding of technique and programming. So again, we have a very clear idea of what technique is at ZeroW, and that's what we teach in something like the coach development system. That's relatively unique in terms of pointing you in the direction of other technical help. There's nothing that I can think of that is really standout. Bear in mind that when it comes to technique for something like powerlifting, for squat, bench, deadlift, there isn't a lot agreed upon. It's really people just making up their own systems, as in there's not a lot agreed upon in, say, the research where it's like, this is the ideal technique for bench press or for deadlifts or whatever it is. We have to make this up based on mainly anecdotal experience. So I guess that would be my piece of advice. You know, listening to someone like myself who has over a decade of experience and has clearly demonstrated their ability through this brand to transform technique regardless of the lifter, you know, at the very top or absolute beginner, towards a consistent standard. Look for that. If you know you're not going to get mentored by me, look for that in someone else. So are there other brands, other people, other influencers that you follow who have a clear idea of what technique should be, and do they offer services to teach what that is? That might be a route that you decide to go to in solidifying your understanding of technique. So that's the coaching side of things from the actual practical perspective. You have to understand technique and coaching as your starting point. This is what you understand before you go out there and start advertising your coaching, because again, otherwise you don't know what you're selling. You know, people are buying something that you're supposed to provide, and if you don't have a clear idea of what that is, I think if you own a car yard and you don't know anything about the car that you're selling, you're not going to have a great sales rep. It's gonna fall to pieces. I listened to a thing this morning about preparation, and I'm notoriously never prepare for anything. I just like wing it based on what's in my head. And so I've taken notes today. So if I'm looking over here, that's what I'm looking at. So coaching itself is the first point. The second point is understanding or having a general structure and system around your coaching. And I mean that in the sense of the administrative side of things. How are you delivering your coaching? What platform does it happen on? Where is the communication happening? How is the communication happening? How often is the communication happening? That's also going to help you over time reverse engineer what your actual capacity is. You know the classic fucking advertising technique. I shouldn't swear. You know the classic advertising technique. Oh, I've just opened 5 spots. Have they actually opened 5 spots? Do they actually have that? Or do they have an unlimited capacity, or a capacity that they don't know where the limit is, just by virtue of the fact that they're not very busy and they're using this? It's called scarcity. It's like there's only 5 spots available, so you better act now. and is a fantastic tool to use. We use it all the time in Zero. If you've seen Zero advertising, there's often things like at the moment we're running foundation memberships for Sunshine Coast and New Zealand. And we say, get in quick, foundation memberships always sell out. That's the truth. You have to be truthful about it, because if you're not, then you don't realize this yourself, but someone watching you sees it clear as day. Every 2 months, you're like 5 spots available, 5 spots available, 5 spots available. If that happens for a couple of years, that's suggesting that you have hundreds of spots, which you probably don't have because you're only one person. And so be real about the actual capacity that you have. If you're starting out and you're like, I'm willing to take on 10 clients, say that and be honest about it. If you get 11, say, no, sorry, I'm going to build my foundation with these 10. The beauty of that, which is kind of scary at first, I know, but the beauty of that is if you have a waiting list ticking away of people who want to be with you, you can genuinely continue to fill intakes up. If you fill up a first intake and you just keep taking people on board, when you go to do a second intake, there's nobody left. So be honest about your actual capacity, about how much you're willing to take on. And again, just circling back to what this is actually talking about, you'll only understand what your actual capacity is if you have a system designed around your capacity. My advice with that is build a system that's designed for the capacity you want to be, or even more than you want to be, so that when you get there, there's room to grow in it. So if you foresee yourself as being able to handle 10 clients starting out, build a system that's robust enough to handle 40 or 50. Now, granted, at the start, your capacity is going to be limited by your lack of skill. You just won't be good enough to do client feedback, check-ins, programming in a timely enough fashion to have a huge capacity. So when people often ask me, I drop these crazy numbers every now and again. When I was at my peak as a coach individually, like when I had the gym just by myself, no staff members, no one helping me do anything. And I was also working a part-time job for the government. I was looking after the training of between 200 and 250 people for about a 1 year period, which sounds crazy. That's factoring in not everyone needing full-time attention. You know, there's monthly check-in clients, there's programming only clients, there's the gym members that not everyone needed a lot of attention. But that's who was on the books, that amount of people. And the only way that was possible was by having very, very, very clear systems. And if I had those systems when I started out, my capacity would be nowhere near that because I just wasn't fast enough. I couldn't write a program quick enough. I didn't have smart spreadsheets to help me write programs quick enough. I couldn't write feedback quick enough. I had to deep dive and analyze videos over and over and over to see what I was trying to see. Whereas as I got better and better, I can look at half a rep and know exactly what I'm going to say. So it's about as you get better over time, your capacity will also grow. At the start, you just need to unpack what is your coaching system going to be? How are you going to communicate? Do you have check-in days? Do you have check-in times? Do you do it via call? Do you do it via a platform? Are you doing it on WhatsApp? Are you doing it on an external platform? My advice to you here, over-deliver. So under-promise, over-deliver. Not even under-promise. It's just have clear expectations and exceed those expectations. Is probably a better way of saying it. At the start, when you do have the ability to do so, just to create more client satisfaction, make sure that the expectations are very clear though, because you can reset those expectations if you're not careful. Then people get upset when you don't consistently exceed those expectations. Make your life easy in the sense of when you're doing online coaching, digital communication, it's easy to just appear available all the time. You have to be able to set very clear boundaries about when you can and can't communicate, or when you are willing or not willing to communicate. A lot of people really struggle with that at the start. It's another thing that people ask me. My phone goes off 24/7 nonstop, messages all the time, all day, at every hour of the day. You have to be really good at just ignoring those. And not just ignoring those in terms of swiping the notification off your screen, but ignoring them up here, because it'll eat at you for ages. If you have to answer this thing and you feel like you have to answer, you have to learn how to tune out of that and just relax and do the job when it's time to do the job. That is a hard skill. And that's what's going to separate the great online coaches from the people that struggle and give up over time is just being able to disconnect. And the only way you can do that is by having clear boundaries that are set, clear expectations that are set, and then sticking to them as much as you can. I know I just said exceed those expectations, and do that, but you have to build in contingencies for yourself as well. You have to have everything ready to make onboarding as efficient as possible. Bear in mind, I'm still talking about this is before you've announced your coaching. So how are you going to bring people on board? What does the structure and the system look like to get people from inquiry to giving you money? Like, have some email templates written out. Make the thing is, if you can have as little back and forth as possible, so asking them as few questions as possible, because that relies on them doing work. You want to make it as easy for the client as possible. So have everything pre-written out, pre-prepared, have links to, intake forms, all that kind of stuff. So you can just go, bam, here's the full thing. Here's how you give me all your information. Here's how you're going to pay. Here's the payment link. Here's what you can expect to happen after you do all that. Within this amount of time, I'm going to send you this. Here's where I will send it. Here's how you'll receive it. Here's how you're going to check in. Everything needs to be systemized to make onboarding quick. Because what you want to do, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but what you want to be able to do is essentially say, okay, someone inquires with you for coaching. You say, great, I'd love to have you on board. I can get you started as soon as 3 days away, or however long it's going to take you to actually gather the information, give everything. What's your email address? Send the template email. The sooner you can do that, it's hot and fresh in their mind, the sooner you can get them everything to start the process, the more likely they are to come on board. The more likely they are to come on board, the quicker you can build their trust and faith, and then the more likely they are to stay a long-term client. You want to have all of this hashed out. If you don't know what you're doing, someone says, yes, I'm keen, and then you're like, oh shit, what do I do? And then you spend a day or two mulling it over, or being like, okay, I want to send this email. Oh no, I don't have an intake form. I don't have a questionnaire. Okay, I'm going to have to build that. Time delay. Have all of that set up before you start pushing. You're going to look way more professional. And I'm talking, you're going to look way more professional than most of the coaches that are currently out there successful anyway. Build it properly from the start, systemize everything, and you're going to have a way easier time being successful with this. The final thing I want to talk about, and this is going to be a very condensed version of the reality of this, is how do you actually get yourself out there and start getting clients? This is going to be much harder for you if you are not, a big name lifter or some sort of influencer with heaps of followers. If you're just the average Joe starting out, there is potentially going to be a harder time setting this up. However, if your systems are robust, don't read too much into the following. I know plenty of people with lots of followers that don't actually do very well from a business perspective, either because they don't know how or because their following is big, but they don't get great engagement or whatever the thing is. But I mean, I don't have a great following. My following's grown a lot in the last 2 years. But before that, when I had 5,000-6,000 followers, I'd still get huge engagement and genuine engagement. 200 likes of genuine likes versus 2,000 likes of just randoms liking something because it's gone viral. Very different experience in terms of those 200 likes. If they're genuine likes, they genuinely saw my thing and it genuinely sparked their interest, are far more likely to sign up to something and give me their money, which is why I've been able to build one of the biggest powerlifting businesses in the world without having a following. Following doesn't mean that much. It's super helpful, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean as much as what people crack it out to be. So in terms of getting yourself out there, you have to announce that you're coaching, have all the systems set up and ready to go. Genuinely announce what your capacity is. So I'm willing to take on 5 people. I'm willing to take on 8 people. Keep that first number relatively small. If you're going to charge from day one, you're going to need to have a pricing structure set up. There's an art to doing that. So again, I want to keep this as condensed as possible. Otherwise, it's a full business mentoring session. Have some pricing. Or if you're literally just getting started out and you don't have a big following behind you, do it for free. Or, the hard thing with doing something for free is that people don't really tend to value it very much. You could do the Hormozy method. The Hormozy method was basically don't pay me, here's a charity, or pick a charity of your choice, show me that you've donated X amount of money and I'll do it for free. So at least there's a financial commitment attached to it. Then once you get them on board, coach them like crazy, get results, get testimonials, film results, and just fucking pummel the internet with their results. Show them what your coaching produces. Knowledge sharing is great, but sharing what you do, the product that you're actually selling, which is a result, is gold when it comes to getting more clients. So share the results, incentivize referrals. If the person is loving the process and they're getting strong and they're getting what they want out of the coaching, now you're ready to start charging. Be like, if you can get me 1-2 paying customers, you can continue to stay with me for free. If you can't do that and you want to keep staying with me, then it's going to be X amount of dollars per week or whatever it is. You incentivizing referrals, because someone telling their friend that you're the bomb, they did all the work in terms of selling for you, and it's far more powerful than you telling them that you're the bomb. If it comes from someone else, they're far more likely to sign up. So if you can incentivize the power of word of mouth, you'll quickly be able to bring more people on board. I've got so much more I can say on this, but I want to keep it as short and as snappy as possible. So hopefully that helps. Again, I'm available for like mentoring on this sort of stuff. There's the coach development system, which is designed to help coaches have a turnkey solution to actually coaching. So hit me up for any of that stuff you might be interested in, and let me know if that helped and what sort of content you want to continue to hear from me. Thank you. Bye.